Started here in a couple of seconds. Hi, Christina. Good evening. How are you?
I'm doing good. It's a long day.
Oh, I bet. Good to see you.
You too.
Right. Got our early birds. Let's see.
I
And
just want
then,
to say hi really quick. I'm here too. I have my video off because I don't have the best Wi-Fi right now. I'm at a conference. But hello, it's good to see you. I'll pop on when I can. I'll have like a little short section, show my face.
hey, can you do me a favor and just maybe go to our YouTube page and just make sure you can see what we're seeing? I'm used to a few
Yes.
more folks on by now, and I just want to make sure. Oh, there goes some more folks. Okay, look.
Yep, confirming I can see it. It looks good.
Beautiful. Love that. Love to hear that. And where's my chat? Alrighty. We'll give folks a couple more seconds. Welcome our members, Nate, Glenda, and Christina, as well as PSE staff. Um, Nate and Christina, you have not had the opportunity to meet Andres Mantilla, the other part of our facilitation team, as well as Carson Bridges. They are also on our facilitation team. Two faces you didn't see at our retreat, but that we talked about a bit.
Well, nice to see you.
Thank you for being here.
Everybody.
Excellent. Here comes everyone. Okay. Well, yeah, as we let people in here, being respectful of our time, making sure we are going to be staying on time, I will start to get us into the swing of the meeting. This is the May 2006 Equity Advisory Group meeting, our first meeting for many new members. I am not Ishmael Nunez, who is our typical facilitator. My name's Ariam Ford. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm actually the project director for this project, but I will be your facilitator today. Let's see here, making sure I got everyone in the room. We will be starting our meeting today with a safety moment from M. Piro, your Energy Equity Program Manager.
Yes, thank you so much, Ariam. Good to see you all. A little sad that it's digital because just a couple of weeks ago we got to share our space together. But regardless, I'm glad that we get to convene and really dive into the work together. Can you go to the next slide, Ariam? For our safety moment for today, I wanted to talk about spring growth and power line safety. If other people's neighborhoods look like mine, there is a lot of green right now. There's a lot of green coming up from below, from the earth, and there's a lot of green, I think, growing overhead in certain areas. And I've also been thinking a lot about some of what Anthony shared at the meeting about the safety of electrical workers and the role that we can all play in help making sure that the people who put themselves on the line, our line workers, are safe. So something that we can do is watch out for trees that are growing into or near power lines. Also, when there's some of these like springtime storms, and I'm talking about springtime, but this applies for all year round, watching for branches that might be hanging over lines. And what we can do is we can call those in and report them. PSE actually has a really great informational page about trees, tree safety, tree maintenance, tree care. If you have concern that a branch may be hanging low, there is an arborist that will come for free from PSE to come and check out the power line and make sure that it's safe. But we can all do our part in helping let folks know where those risky overhangs might be. There's also a number here that you can call if that's easier. And I also wanted to highlight, if you see that the tree is touching the lines, go straight to 911 because that can be a really serious risk. You should call 911 and you can call PSE either by finding a number on that website that I shared or the number that's on the screen right away to let them know that there's like an imminent risk. You should never take it upon yourself to trim anywhere near a power line, even a tree that's on your property. And you should stay about 10 feet away. When in doubt, just look up the site, pse.com/trees, or give a call. Or you also all have our contact information. You can reach out to us if you forget or are not sure, but just remember like, hey, I think there's something we can do around tree safety and power lines. That's all I got. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Em. And for our new members, as a reminder, we start with a safety moment because of the culture of safety that PSC upholds for all of the reasons Em just said. And so we will be doing these regularly at our meetings. We will also be doing our equity moments as presented by our EAG members. Tonight's focus is procedural equity. And we are joined by Glenda, who is going to take us through our equity moment for today.
Hi, everyone. Glad to be here, and I'm glad to see all of you. So for this month's equity moment, I wanted to share about procurement and grant making from an equity lens. My work experience for the past 10 years has been around grants, both in the government and in the nonprofit sector. I wanted to walk us through how procurement and grant systems are built in ways that unintentionally leave out grassroots and community-based organizations who are closest to the challenges and also the solutions. However, it doesn't have to be this way, and there are practices and process improvements that are being implemented to ensure equity. Procurement is about buying goods, services, or work through contracts, and those systems are usually built for large, well-resourced organizations. Grant making is about providing funding for activities that advance public's purpose, and inequitable practices can create barriers for smaller organizations. Next slide, please. If you've worked in the nonprofit sector, you probably know or have experienced some of these challenges or barriers already. This is some of the list for the challenges and barriers. I'll read off some, but not all. So grant applications that are long, technical, or require professional grant writers who know how to navigate. As you know, some smaller organizations function with limited staff and often do not have dedicated grant writers. Procurement language is often hard to understand without legal or financial expertise. Another barrier is most procurement and grants pay on a reimbursement basis. Most smaller organizations do not have cash to front costs for weeks or months. I've seen government reimburse from 30 to 90 days out, which is very challenging. Another barrier is high administrative burdens. This includes oftentimes managing invoices, deliverables, reporting requirements, and sometimes audits. Throughout the years that I have been around grants, I've also been part of grant making processes and or currently been witnessing the government, private, or philanthropic sectors or grant making organizations centering equity into their contracting structures and practices. Some of the ways that equity can be centered includes, and that's the list on the right, prioritizing lived experience, trust, and long-term community impact over formal credentials. Intentionally designed grant making ensures that in the process and in the grant application, there's questions where applicants and are able to share their lived experiences and their relationship to the communities that they serve. Intentionally designed procurement and grant making also ensures that resources are prioritized for rural, tribal entities, and BIPOC-led organizations. This ensures that benefits are flowing back to the communities. There's certain instances, like the Washington's Community Reinvestment Fund. You might know them by CRP. It's an example of funding being appropriated to address racial, economic, and social disparities. It's not perfect, but this program is directing funding to historically underserved communities. By and for organizations, the Office of Minority and Women Business Enterprise, or OMWBE certified. These are some of the structures where it's being added as eligibility, preferences, or outreach requirements in the solicitation process. And this helps to ensure that typically disadvantaged businesses or organizations are included or prioritized in the system. Another example is investing in community design grants and procurement programs, providing grant writing or bid procurement process or assistance. I've seen this process where workshops are offered to businesses or organizations and how to contract with them or walk them through the process. I've also seen processes where they're allowing multiple ways to submit an application, whether it be video or audio. I've seen more simplified and more relational type of application processes. I've seen processes where they brought in the groups of subject matter experts and communities with lived experience to be part of the design. And this includes in the application development, from the rating criteria development to the reviews to the allocation of the awards. The other thing that I wanted to kind of highlight and elevate is the improving payment and contracting practices. I mentioned one of the biggest barriers for many smaller organizations is the cost reimbursement. So there are ways to improve that, and some is offering advance payment at the beginning or making the model more milestone-based payments. Pay on time and simplify the contracts, and emphasize learning partnerships over punishment. Next slide, please. Next slide, thank you. So to sum it up, equity in procurement and grant making means removing barriers, sharing power, and ensuring that resources are flowing to the communities most impacted by inequities, not just organizations with the most capacity, cash reserves, or grant writing expertise. So in a few minutes, as part of our time today, you'll hear from Mackenzie about the solar grant. I wanted to mention that I was part of the process last year, and I have to say that the grant making structure and process that they have is thoughtfully designed, and you'll hear some of the equity-centered practices that I mentioned above. So with that, thank you for listening.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Glenda. And we're really excited about how this rolls into the next topic. And hopefully this has put everyone kind of in their EAG member thinking caps about equity considerations as we look at very, in some ways, bureaucratic operations and kind of policy level things, and recognizing that cultural competency and meeting folks where they are, even in that space, matters a lot. So thank you, Glenda. Before we jump into that topic, I have a couple of housekeeping elements, and here's another member. First, there are closed captions available on both the live stream and on the Zoom. So if you do need them, they should be at the bottom of your screen in your toolbar. Secondly, here's our agenda. We are in the middle of our welcome section. We're going to talk about solar grants. We have our break at 5:40 and then have a conversation about high energy burden elimination and key strategies therein at 5:50. We will have our public comment happening at 6:50. So that window will be open. And then 6:55, we'll do next steps and adjourn at 7. A couple of things about public comment and as well as participation, really looking for participants to have an open mind, listen carefully, lean into the topics, actively participating. Constructive conversation is what we're here for, and ultimately respect of everyone. And then from our observers, please acknowledge that this is the time for this group to meet and discuss the topics, and that we are using our YouTube chat as a forum. And so please feel free to put some thoughts there, and they will be added to our meeting records. Our YouTube comment opens at 6:50 p.m. and we will be putting instructions for those joining during our break at 5:40 p.m. So we will have the first 5 individuals who call in. We'll have 2 minutes to speak. If you are not able to call in, please, you can use the YouTube to leave messages and we will capture those as well. Before I do start before I introduce Mackenzie, I just wanted to give some observances shout outs. We often talk about cultural observances that are happening this month. And this month is Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander Heritage Month, as well as Jewish American Heritage Month, Haitian Heritage Month, Mental Health Awareness Month, and then also Older Americans Month for those who celebrate. And so finally, we had May Day on the 1st and Cinco de Mayo on the 5th. And then later this month, we have Memorial Day. And so we have a lot of events, a lot of different cultural celebrations, a lot of remembrance days, and just hope that you are taking part in this month. If I missed any, please feel free to drop it in the chat and we will make sure we capture it. So we are joined by Mackenzie Martin, Clean Energy Product Manager, Equity Customer Clean Energy Solutions. And today, Mackenzie is here to present Green Power Solar Grant and to recruit working group participants. If you have your binder, do a little binder check. I'm gonna talk a little bit about how this topic relates to the action plan worksheet. And so we're looking at 3 things in particular under accessibility, affordability, and accountability. We're thinking about the solar grant project or program, pardon me. It falls under EAG actions to provide guidance on systemic obstacles to program participation for customers with diverse needs and circumstances, getting right at what Glenda was talking about earlier, to advocate and provide perspective on finding hidden customers who need access but are missed by current methods. And so that's going to be also that identification of eligible program participants. And then under accountability, the EAG wants to guide and provide perspective on accountability mechanisms that demonstrate how equity commitments are achieving real community benefits. And so just a couple of things we are looking for you to think about as you're thinking about your systemic advising role. This particular topic is at the involved level, which means that PSE will actively ensure that EAG concerns are considered an alternative, so working with you. And there is a bigger breakdown of the IATP2 feedback spectrum in the back of your packets if you do need to brush up on that. You are going to learn about the solar grants. We're hoping that you will consider participating on the panel. And then we are hoping that a couple of you, just like Glenda, can share your experience as well about how it's gone before in the past, as well as if everyone can share this opportunity with folks in your communities in the present. And with that, I will pass it over to Mackenzie.
Thank you very much. So I want to start by saying I really appreciate what Glenda said about these grants being thoughtfully designed. But I do want to acknowledge that I think that is in big part thanks to EAG members like Glenda who have been involved in shaping these grants for the past 4 years, going on 5. So while addressing affordability is somewhat inherent to the design of the grants, EAG members have really influenced program changes that have greatly increased that accessibility, the accessibility and accountability pieces. So for a lot of you, this may be the first time you're hearing about the grants. What are they? This year we have $1 million to distribute to eligible applicants who are installing solar at their property. These solar installations will be owned by the customers and will result in savings to their utility bills, increasing affordability and allowing them to reinvest more money into the communities they serve. So applicants can request up to 100% or $100,000 per project. And some technical pieces, projects must be located in PSE's electric service area. They must be less than or equal to 100 kilowatts in size. They must have a total solar resource fraction of at least 75%, which is a technical term, but just means there's not too much shading, whether from trees or other buildings at the site that will prevent the panels from producing. And finally, applicants must either own the property or have at least 5 more years in their lease and have property owner approval to install solar. Next slide. And who is eligible? So community-based organizations, government agencies, and tribal entities that serve community members with demonstrated economic, health, housing, accessibility, or other identified needs. So I mentioned this in the previous slide, but what is most important for us throughout this entire grant process is that the applicant can articulate how they're going to use the savings from their solar to reinvest in the communities they serve. We have some past project examples that will give you a flavor of successful applicants. I won't read through all of these, but I'll highlight a few. Ferndale Food Bank utilized their savings to increase distributions and deliveries to families of migrant farmers and rural schools in their area. And then South County Area Human Services Alliance passed their savings on to their tenants, which are a set of small essential service providers that provide shelter, employment support, and food distribution to the greater Kent area. Next slide. And to articulate the distributional equity of the solar grants, I wanted to share some statistics. These grants have been going on for over 9 years, and in that time period, we've awarded over $6 million to increase access to solar for over 90 projects. And these grants are only getting more popular. Last year alone, we received our biggest batch of applications yet. We had 38, and we were able to fund 12 projects totaling over 900,000. So I'm excited we'll have a little more, $1 million to distribute this year. Next slide. Oh, did we skip a slide? There we go, perfect. So next I'll run through the overarching process we use to administer these grants, focusing both on the applicant experience and then how EAG members have influenced change. So starting from the left, we strive to be really iterative. In the first part of the year, we work with anyone who was involved in the process to hear what we can start, stop, and continue doing to improve the grants. So this includes EAG members who are on the review panel, as well as customers who applied to the program. Then we take all the viable process improvement suggestions and weave them into the work plan and materials, like the application or the website ahead of the June launch. Then to get the word out about the grants, we work with our community teams, our recommended installers, and community members like yourselves. There is a webinar 2 weeks post-launch for interested applicants where they can get a deeper look into the grants, and I walk through the application for them. That will be recorded and posted on the website, but also during that application period, customers can submit questions to me, and I try to turn around and answer within 24 hours, depending on the complexity. At the urging of EAG members, this is our 3rd year offering free bid procurement and grant writing assistance via our partner Spark Northwest. So Spark can take interested applicants up until July 29th, and they intend to meet them where they are by using a spectrum of services based on the applicant's resourcing and past experience with solar. So we have some applicants who have never done a solar project before. They feel overwhelmed by the list of solar contractors, but Spark will help them get bids, translate the bids, help them select a bid, and put all that into their applications. But we also have some applicants who have done solar installations before, or like Glenda mentioned, have a grant writer on staff, and perhaps they just want a review of their grant. And so Spark can do that as well. Once applications close in August, we start the review process. A partner of PSE begins by reaching out to all applicants to schedule an interview with them. So we don't want to judge an application solely on what's on paper, especially if the materials were confusing or the organization was short on time or resources. So this is really another opportunity for folks to provide more context to their projects, and also for us to ask any lingering questions that we have and make sure we're not just assuming something. Finally, all the review panel members, which is a mix of EAG and PSE staff, score projects on their own and then meet together and discuss their ratings and work on final project selection and funding decisions. So technical feasibility is considered pass-fail, and instead we focus primarily on the community impact of the project, the organization's commitment to equitable and inclusive access, and the unique education and outreach tactics the project may employ to educate their communities about solar. We aim to wrap this portion up by year end so awardees can then get under contract with their chosen installer, begin construction of the project, and see benefits flowing to the community in 2027. Next slide.
Hey, Mackenzie, we've got
Yeah.
a couple of
Oh, okay.
questions.
Yeah.
So our first question is coming from member Rachel Gates, and she's curious about how this program compares with the enhanced incentive for solar credit, and thinks that that's a little less formalized in terms of application, and wonders why the two programs are so different relative to their procedures.
Yeah, I can speak a little bit about that. So the solar grants are first and foremost funded differently. The solar grants are funded by voluntary renewables program participants in Green Power and Solar Choice, whereas solar energy credit and multi-occupant solar enhanced incentives are funded via a tariff we have approved by the UTC. That just means we have sort of different bounds, parameters, processes, and procedures around them. The solar grants have been going for 9 years. Multi-occupant solar and solar energy credit enhanced incentives are very, very new. And I think 2025 was our first year. Um, Not to get too in the weeds, but competition for installing net metered projects is much bigger than designing a system to the technical specifications of solar energy credit and multi-occupant solar. They're not as popular, they're new programs, so those are rolling and less formal while we ramp up. And if we start to see more competition for those dollars, then we will probably use learnings from the solar grants to change them.
Amazing. And then, Rachel, you're welcome to verbalize your comment as well if you have any follow-ups. Christina, oh, she did have a follow-up on a different question. Is there a way we can speed up the award notification in the future as costs are escalating for equipment? Not sure if that's impacted kind of the procurement process for any folks, but if there's any way to otherwise accommodate that.
Yes, and I definitely feel that we've been trying really hard to pull that decision making from December into the November timeframe. We were a little challenged last year by how many great applications we have, and so it took longer to review. We haven't had anyone pull out for lack of being able to afford that, but we are watching that, and we do always try to have notifications out by year end. I know last year it was of concern related to the federal tax credit, I believe. So we tried to hustle those notifications out this door, and I think are trying to pull it up into the year as much as possible.
Do you follow up to that? Do you
Yeah.
have any like contingency funds available if that's an issue, or do you encourage applicants to include contingency funds for cost escalation?
We do allow contingency funds, I believe up to either 5 or 10%. So we have allowed that in the past. What we have pulled, a lever we have pulled in the past, I believe it was 2020. So COVID, prices were skyrocketing, supply chains were very um, unpredictable. And so what we did is we gave everyone a chance to go back to their installers and acknowledge that prices had risen and get essentially see if program costs needed or cost to install solar needed to increase so that we weren't both harming the applicant or the installer. And then we had contingency funds where we paid more out based on updated bids from the installer. So we have done that in the past. We haven't needed to in recent years, but it is an option we do have.
And we have, I think, a discussion moment at the end of the presentation, but also members, if you want to raise your hand or put things in the chat, we're doing pretty good on time and happy to call on you.
Okay, so we know that applying for the grants and embarking on a large-scale solar installation is no small feat, so we've been trying to look for ways to make the process more accessible. This is not an exhaustive list, but I wanted to call a few pieces out. Glenda talked about this too. Each year we see ways to shorten the application. It's been 9 years, so inevitably we have holdover questions, and each year it's a good opportunity to ask ourselves, wait, do we actually need this information from the applicant in order to select projects? Or is it just a question that has followed us for 9 years? We also recently reorganized the application to be very clear what parts of the application an installer should help the applicant fill out versus what parts an applicant can fill out themselves. So separating that technical piece versus information about your, communities and the work you do there. We also offer the opportunity for organizations to use video or audio format to narrate their community impact as opposed to writing out new content. There's that free grant writing and bid procurement assistance that Spark Northwest provides. The prioritization of new applicants has helped us hone our outreach strategies to connect with smaller organizations with less resources, organizations that don't typically get PSE funding. And that's also helping us create new relationships within our community because we have a whole host of programs that they might be eligible for. So once we have that connection point with them, we can share about all the others programs as well. We were always hearing from applicants, I want to do a community education session on solar, but I just don't know where to start. So for the second year, we are also partnering with Spark Northwest to offer grant recipients an opportunity to co-create an education session that meets the needs of their community, and that's covered by the grant funding as well. After notifications are sent, we do offer feedback to unsuccessful applicants to help increase transparency in the decision-making process, and then also get them connected with other PSE programs that might be a good fit. I talked about this a bit at the beginning, but it was a suggestion from EAG members to offer a paid survey to all applicants to better understand their experience and opportunities for improvement. Next slide.
We do have one more question. Okay. Well, first, excitement that PSE is using Spark Northwest as a resource. Really excited about that. Folks are great in the chat. And then a question from Elizabeth. Will you be sending out materials that we can share with communities about the grant and the webinar?
Yes, definitely. They are almost all the way through design and branding approval. And as soon as they're ready, I'll be sending them to be distributed to you all. Okay, before I dive into the time commitment that is involved in being part of the review panel, I also want to give space for Megan, Monica, Glenda, and Elizabeth to share their experience from last year. I know Glenda shared a little bit at the beginning, but obviously if you have anything else to add about the experience.
Who wants to go first? When speaking. I can go first. It was my first year being on the review panel. I really enjoyed it. I have reviewed grants for, National Science Foundation and all those kinds of things that are so punitive, right? And this was really refreshing to be part of one that is helping people, right? And not just kind of excluding them because, oh, nope, you went one sentence too long, you did this kind of thing wrong. And so, yeah, I agree with what Glenda said about how it is a really kind of a process that supports people. So if you're talking to community members, and they're scared about it, for sure, that, the help and the support is there and they should definitely apply. It was a lot of work. It was rewarding work, but there were a lot of applicants. And it took, I guess, a lot more time at a very busy time of the year. I think we talked about moving it maybe slightly earlier if we can, as to not coincide with Thanksgiving, if possible. But yeah, I found it really, really rewarding. I didn't review the one from my community, but the one from my community got funded, and it was just really interesting to see how it really is making a difference in the ways that matter in our communities, and it just feels really great to be a part of that process. So I can't say enough good things about Mackenzie and the way she runs the process. It was really, there was no arguing, right? It was just this point and this point, and I loved how much of a conversation it was, instead of, yeah, we all filled out the matrix, right? And we all kind of came up with our numbers, but then to still have it be a discussion was great, and just really made it feel like a good process. So good job, Mackenzie.
Thank you.
Yeah, I want to echo Megan in saying that it is a big commitment in time during a busy time of year, but it is really great to do, and I enjoy doing it, and I look forward to hopefully doing it again if there's some space available, because I've done it the last 2 years. But it is really nice because you read the applications, but you also get to hear about the interview and the verbal discussion and storytelling that happens, to really put into perspective what the organization does and their impact and the communities that they work with. So it's really nice to learn about all of these cool organizations all around the state.
Excellent. Mackenzie, I would say if you want to go through your time commitment, and then we have our next kind of conversation slide.
Can you read what Monica said in the chat real quick?
Oh, did
can
I
read it?
miss? Yes,
Yeah,
please go ahead.
Monica said, I'm in a place that I can't really come off mute. It was a significant time commitment, but very personally rewarding. Since there were so many applications, it was very competitive and hard to decide.
Yeah, thank you all for saying that. I'll get into the commitment. What I will say is it was a lot last year, and I think the review panel had some good ideas of options we maybe have this year if we get the same tsunami of applications, because it's not always feasible for every single person on the panel to review every single project. So we have some good ideas in our back pocket to hopefully not make it so cumbersome. But we will likely schedule orientation meetings in August or September. And then meetings actually run through the December-January timeframe. It goes into the first quarter of the year because we like to hold a debrief and process improvement meeting to gather all those suggestions for what will be the 2027 round. On average, because folks do report their time, which is paid at a rate of $50 per hour, it was about 20 to 25 hours per person over those 5 to 6 months. But like review panel members pointed out, it was sort of concentrated in that, I think, October to December timeframe, which is not an easy time of year for everyone. So I am committing as much as possible to trying to pull that timeline back without knowing how many applications we'll get. The last thing I'll say is I would note that the meetings are usually in the evenings. I think past last year we settled on 4 to 6 p.m. When we did have them. Next slide. So if you would like to participate in the review panel, you can drop your name in the chat now, or if you need time to think it over, just email M and or myself by June 22nd. I also want to say this is not at all binding. So if you say yes today and then something comes up in your life, you can get out of it. If you say yes on June 22nd and I email you about the orientation later in the year, you can still definitely get out of it. So I would say let us know if you're interested. But certainly consider if it fits your schedule. We are going to limit the opportunity to 5 participants this year. Again, please don't let this stop you from expressing interest. If we do get more volunteers than we can accommodate, we might need to pull some levers like prioritizing new EAG members or regional representation. And this was brought up previously, but you are also active in your community. So if you know of any eligible applicants, we'd love it if you could spread the word. On or before the June 3rd launch, I will send outreach materials to be distributed to you. And that usually comes with a one-pager, a link to the website, any additional supplemental materials, and a email template you can use if you're trying to send an email to let someone know about the opportunity. And then I am always available for questions at the email here.
It looks like we've got Rachel's got her hand up.
Yeah, one thing I just wanted to note is I think it's totally fine if you encourage like your organization or an organization that you have some affiliation with to apply. I initially was apprehensive about joining the EAG because I thought that all EAG members were involved in the solar grants process, and I thought the tribe I worked for would be applying. But there's a way, if you know that an organization you're affiliated with is planning to apply, just kind of keep that in mind if you want to volunteer as well.
Thank you so much for saying that, Rachel. I forgot to talk about this. What we have done in the past is if you are meaningfully involved with an organization, like you work there, you volunteer there, you utilize their services, we've set up a process where you essentially abscond from scoring or necessarily like helping make the decision to fund them or not. So sort of sit that one out, but you can still participate in the review panel as a whole.
If I can jump in really quick, I've noticed we've already got a lot of enthusiastic interest. We were hoping to have 5 folks on the panel. We have more than that interested. So we'll regroup. I'll chat with Mackenzie and see what we can accommodate. If anyone who volunteered is like, I'm okay stepping back this round, please let us know. Otherwise, we'll talk about what's a good balance of reviewers, try to make sure that we have good representation across the folks in the group, the service area, all the characteristics of EAG members. And perhaps we could follow up at SteerCo around with some follow-up on this.
Absolutely. The one thing I will say from a logistics standpoint before we go to break is we do have someone on an iPhone, and I'm just not sure who that is. I just want to make sure we have a name to your raising of your hand. So at some point during this call, if you could come off mute or chat us your name, that would be excellent. Oh, hi.
I'm using iPhone, so I'm not quite sure if that's it.
Awesome.
But can you
Well,
see me though, right? Because
yes.
I'm
Yes,
okay.
that
Perfect.
should be you. Then
Yeah.
M's already got it. M's on it.
Cool.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much, Mackenzie.
Thank
We know
you.
we love you. This is a big draw every year. So yeah, thanks, Mackenzie.
Thank you.
That brings us to our break. We are going to be on break for 10 minutes. We're about 2 minutes over. So please come back at 5:52. And for those joining us on YouTube, I do have a information up here about how to join the Zoom link when it is public comment period at 6:50. So for members, please join us back at 5:52, and then we will see you then. Welcome back, folks. I'm gonna do a quick scan. Hello again. Long time no see. uh, Mike Peroni? Am I missing something? Hey, Carson, can you
You're muted, Ariam, if you're trying to talk to us.
Oh, sorry. I was talking to Carson.
Okay.
Carson and I can see each other. I'm just making sure that our guest list is right and that isn't anyone from for potential public comment. Okay. Welcome back, everybody. Hopefully, you are here, and I will take us into our next topic. The second topic for today is high energy burden elimination, key strategies. Troy will be giving our presentation today, but I'm going to set the stage for you. Again, on our handy dandy 4A's worksheet, we're working in the A's of accessibility and affordability primarily. And some of the overlapping kind of goals or actions you all are looking at in relation to energy burden include advocating and advising on expanding systems that ease enrollment access into programs that support people who are energy burdened, and then advocating for a more equitable rate structure, as well as advocating and providing perspective on hidden customers who need access and services but are missed through current identification methods. And that is all in perspective of energy burden elimination, a reminder about our tactical to system scale thinking. Um, we are trying to transform how the system works rather than focus on immediate gaps in operations. And so as we are going through this, just keep that in mind, as well as the level that we're working at around this topic of key strategies for, energy burden elimination is collaborate. And collaborate means to partner with the public, i.e. the EAG, in each aspect of the decision, including the development of alternatives and the identification of a preferred solution as it relates to strategies for energy burden elimination. And so that is the level of engagement we're looking for. And with that, we are looking for you to consider the current energy burden landscape, to consider PSE's existing approaches to energy burden and its associated challenges. Let's see, I believe that is Alex, to look for opportunities that PSE has to lead on high energy burden elimination, and to do all of that in the context of systemic solutions. So again, how are we transforming the system rather than focusing on kind of immediate day-to-day operations gaps when it comes to energy burden? And so with that, I will hand it over to our presenter, Troy.
Well, hello all. Good to see you all again. This time on the little boxes on the screen instead of in person. I promise you that I am not a frequent presenter to the EAG. It just happens to be how the topics have flown. So, with me today is Kalima, who you met at the retreat. This is Kalima's area of expertise. And so if there are any technical questions, she's here to back me up. But I know there won't be any of those because we have talked about the foundation for this information at the retreat. And also you have access to the report. There's nothing we're going to talk about here in this first couple of slides that isn't in the report. And so in the spirit of that, I'm going to try to move fairly quickly through these slides to get us to the engagement part of the conversation. So This is just two different ways. On the right, it's the picture. On the left, it's the words that sort of highlight that energy burden is concentrated among the lowest income customers. That totally makes a lot of sense. And the data supports that. A reminder that high energy burden is when you spend more than 6% of your income on household energy annually. So we've talked about 50% of customers are estimated low income. Energy burden, as you can see, for all residential customers, their energy burden is the median, I think, is 2.7% of income spent on energy. For low income customers, as a group, it's 4.7. And then for those who are low income and high energy burden, we're looking at 10.3%. And then so it works out to about 19% of the total residential customers are low income and high energy burden. Um, and so, we've talked about these before. This is just sort of setting the table for who is really in need here. Next slide. This is another sort of familiar slide, even before you join the EAG. And as I said at the retreat, outside of the context of the work in the energy space, we're all familiar, if you've ever driven on I-5, to sort of understand where the valleys where in our service territory and in our state, um, you know, poverty sort of resides. And so that is reflected in this map based on the definition for named communities from the Department of Health data. So no surprises here, but this is just another visual representation of the reality. And, because a lot of the census data and other things are based on geography, we have our GIS expert, Megan, in the room. This is just another way of looking at something that's sort of understandable to all of us. Next slide. Okay, so must remind everyone on the regulatory basis for some of this work. CETA, the Clean Energy Transformation Act, does talk about energy burden. Oh, you're too modest, Megan. So you might have heard some of this in the conversation at the retreat with Oxan and myself. So, the language talks about we must provide energy assistance funding and programs to the extent practicable. Priority must be given to low-income households with a high energy burden. We have a reporting obligation to provide our findings biannually to the Department of Commerce. And the report that you have access to in the pre-read, the energy burden analysis, is part of that requirement. And as Ox and I discussed, there was some legislative changes. There were some timelines for this that were removed for the reduction. And then that statute that did that added a statewide energy assistance program to make sure that folks who didn't have the same requirements that we do were actually following through and setting up programs for energy assistance. So that's the legislative basis and regulatory basis for some of this work. Next slide. So we are making progress. We feel good about the progress we're making, even though there's still a lot of work to do. The programs we currently have are reaching customers and reducing energy burden. In 2024, last full set of data that we're working with for that report, um, we about 126,000 customers receiving assistance. We made an effort a number of years ago to strengthen our outreach to named communities. So 36% of the recipients are from highly impacted communities, 47% from high vulnerable populations. Median energy burden has been reduced for those groups that we're providing assistance to from 7.7 to 4.7. And so you can see how that's happened, but we know that there's still a long ways to go, and we would like to continue. Thanks, Ba, to continue that work, and that's what this is about. Some of the things we've done to increase accessibility, um, self-attestation. So I'll talk more about this at one of the later slides, but it essentially allows the applicant um, to say whether they meet the requirements without providing sort of documentation that we then have to review. There is an audit process for a portion of those to make sure that we do have some sense of what the compliance is. Automatic eligibility for programs like a partnership with the Seattle Housing Authority, where um, you know people who are part of that program are eligible, and we're continuing to provide that. Um, Increased access. We are expanding a partnership with the Department of Social and Health Services that has an online portal, Washington Connection, that allows people to sort of apply to multiple different um, programs based on a lot of these programs have similar eligibility sort of requirements. Um, and then just partnership and relationships with community-based organizations and doing events in those organizations, doing in-language events with certain communities. So lots of ways in which this has happened. And then continuing to improve the programs and the program designs as we learn more, similar to the approach Mackenzie's taking. Next slide. So lots of different programs. Bill discount rate was launched in 2023. Another one of those where self-attestation has helped reduce the administrative burden. You can apply for that program and the PSE Help program, another assistance program at the same time. Past due bill forgiveness. So this is looking at if you've gotten into arrears, how do we help you, manage that? So we have a number of different programs there. A Head Start benefit, a program where we provided additional past due bill forgiveness with sort of the person not having to apply to go through that. We have quite a bit of data on who needs assistance for certain types of customers, and we were able to move forward on that. And as you can see, about programs expanding, so about 250 million in ratepayer funding assistance for across a number of these programs. So very robust, programs, but we believe that there can be greater reduction in energy burden with more focused efforts there. Next slide. So challenges remain. The need is growing faster than our current approach can address, and with sort of rates going up, that increases the need. I should mention that for any rate increases that we do, there usually has to be uh, uh, not an there's a required increase in assistance. So it's not like rates can go up and assistance doesn't go up. There's a correlation there between those two as part of a requirement that we have to meet. Um, but we believe that to sort of get to the 6%, it probably would take another 220 or so million to get us there. But if we spend that 220 million the way we're spending the current 250, I don't think it will get us there. And so that's part of the idea of how do we focus on getting there as a priority, and that would then influence the approaches that we take. So some of the barriers, data privacy, we have to respect customers' privacy, and so we can't just like share, private information with folks, uh, with anyone, right? We have privacy requirements there. Customers can opt in to say you can't share my information for this purpose. And so that's one way in which we're working with Department of Social and Health Services to have that done. Likewise, their customers can do the same to have access to our programs. Remember, a lot of the DSHS programs are federal. And so the federal government has fairly significant privacy requirements. Makes sense to protect vulnerable individuals. So currently, the programs are on a first come, first serve basis. And I think to Glenda's points earlier, any barriers mean that folks who are more able to overcome those barriers are the ones who are going to um, find it easier to participate. And those folks tend to be um, less energy burdened than others. We're not trying to create a competition, but we just think as part of program design, we should be prioritizing reaching the folks who are the most burdened. I want to stop here. I think there are some questions in the chat.
Yeah, I think Kalima answered one in text. I was just pointing out something that was on the slide, one of the data points. But then Monica just asked a question about involving the quants. I love it, nerds, in optimizing the program so that the maximum number of people are moved out of energy burden. Is there a way to involve the quants, or I think quantities? Is that, Monica, is that where and you may or may not be on a place to go off mute.
Yeah, I mean, I think the partly what we're doing here, a lot of the success, yes, to your question, Monica, a lot of the success we've had so far is leveraging the data we have, between the fact that we, know what we're billing our customers and how much energy they use, but also a lot of our models are, as you say, the quant models, um, are using, I think I mentioned this at the retreat, private data from like the Experian and the other, folks that have a lot of information on us all, and they're able to use that information to predict to a high degree, who's in need. So that's allowed us in some cases when we need to expand and disperse funds over a short period of time to use that data to predict and then to sort of provide that benefit to those customers. We do have times when, of course, it's not an exact science, and we do have times when we get it wrong and we provide assistance to someone who um, isn't doesn't meet the requirements. And usually, when we find that out, we make changes. I'm finding in this work, it can be it's surprisingly upsetting to folks when that happens. And so we try to correct that. But yes, that's a big part of the approach. Okay, so next slide. So trying to shift from compliance driven to community impact. So, how are we reducing energy burden? And as you can see, it's both individual. We have a lot of energy burden customers who are outside of named communities, right? They're in every community. Um, and so how do we make sure that that's our focus? So, technology, identify community need as the priority. Um, we have gotten feedback from the EAG over the years that that's the approach that we should be taking, and sort of we following up on that. Um, High energy burden elimination as a key part of how we um, engage with communities, not just when it comes to billing, but also all of our operations as a key part of our equity strategy. And then integration across planning, the integrated system plan, resource planning, delivery system plan, resource acquisitions, all of that, we think about equity as part of that. So it's a key thing that's driving a lot of our work. Next slide. Um, so we think there are mechanisms that can impact energy burden, right? So how we structure costs, we talked about some of that when we talked about rate making at the retreat, how we direct assistance, how we invest in communities, where we build certain things. The work with McKinsey is an example of that. And then how we measure success. And we've talked about with you all, you have talked with us about having greater impact as our measures. And so that's one of the reasons for this entire conversation, which is mostly foundational today. Next slide. So the vision, we think we all agree that the biggest impact would be to eliminate high energy burden. Um, so we can look at the community scale clean energy benefits that are visible and measurable. Um, you know, you see small examples of that in the solar grants, right? The utility as a community partner, beyond just being a service provider, we find at times that we can partner with other organizations beyond just being an energy provider. We can partner with Habitat for Humanity, for instance, right? And others who are serving the same community. When I talked about DSHS and other things like that, it's about us partnering, because if there's one priority lesson I've learned since I've been engaging in this role at different retreats and different forums, Alex reminded me that he was at the first forum we had out in Skagit. And one of the things I've seen over the years is people say, when I'm struggling, I don't see the world as there's a food bucket and there's a housing bucket and there's a utilities bucket and all of that, right? I just have needs. I'm trying to survive and get by. And I wish that there was some collaboration and coordination between all these different providers, to make my life easier, and instead of me having to navigate all of this, because who's in a better position to do that? Organizations with capacity and resources, or individuals, and communities, as Glenda pointed out. That's one of the things that we're looking at. And then, rather than just continuing to expand and doing the same thing and affecting energy burden over time, why not have the vision of elimination and then organize our strategies around how do we do that? Next slide.
Come on. There we are. Would you like to set us up? Or it's a concluding thought, and I'm happy to explain the activity.
Yeah. So are you going to explain this slide?
Yeah, I can explain. If you're done, I can explain.
Well, so let me just say, this is a process. So we are, it's okay.
Clearly,
This
I
is a
don't normally run the slides.
this is a process. We, are wanting to make sure that we lay the foundation, give you enough information for you to feel comfortable with having a conversation, about how we proceed from here. Um, what are the key things we should be looking at? We're not looking to solution today, but we're looking to say what should the solutions look like? What are the key things we should be looking for? And then let those sort of drive us to the conversation about solutions. We are going to have extensive internal conversations to PSE, because there will need to be systems and programmatic changes, regardless of the approaches that we take. And those will require us to be thoughtful. We are looking to engage with other interested parties, who generally participate in our regulatory proceedings and other things like that. So I think that's another thing that we're looking to do. So I want you to feel comfortable with your lived experience to sort of say, here's what we think, and have that conversation. So with that, I will hand it over to, oh, before that, Em made a good point. I did see her message. Any questions on any of this stuff that I just went over, and anything to help prepare you for the transition into the dialogue? Ba.
Hey, thank you, Troy, and it was really good to kind of see these numbers and what PSC has been doing to kind of like eliminate energy burden. I'm just like really inspired by the work that you guys have been doing so far. But I just have like a quick question. With the metrics, or I would say strategies that you guys implemented, bill, discount rate, past due bill, and Head Start, those programs, was that all part of the strategy that helped? About 12% of high energy burden folks to drop out from the larger group, like the third, because I think he served about 35%, 35,000 people
Yeah.
were no longer energy burden. So was that all part, like the strategy part of that, or is after
Yes.
that you start like including implementing other stuff? Okay.
Yes, that's all part of that, and that's all
Okay.
worked to deliver that. I think the reason why we're saying, uh, let's not just continue to do more of that, and come up with those types of solutions,
Right.
is that, we think it would be more focused, especially with the ways in which things are getting expensive right now,
Right.
and so many families are under pressure. It's
Right.
really important that we focus on setting a clearer target to
Right.
make this not be an issue for folks. And I was reading recently an article that was talking about how, and I think I alluded to this before reading this article when we were at the retreat.
Mhm.
This idea that let's use gas prices as an example, right?
Mhm.
For some people, the burden of that is such that they're having to make decisions, right, about can they get to work and all of these
Right.
other things. It's a
Yep. Yep.
crisis for them. For lots of other people, it's an inconvenience, right?
Right. Yep.
They're not changing,
Right. The
they're
life.
not changing their behavior.
Yep.
They're just annoyed and frustrated, but
Right.
they're still doing their thing. Others have had to make drastic
Yes.
changes.
Yes.
And that's an analogy to what we're talking about here. Let's
Right.
try to provide big assistance to the people who are struggling.
Right.
So yes.
Perfect. Perfect. Thank you.
I wanted to go back to a question Christina put in the chat. Christina, would you like to verbalize your question or do you want me to read it? I'll give you a chance.
You can read it.
Great. Christina agrees with your point in community collaboration and wonders why not work with community to develop apprenticeships in PSE that could help members out of poverty through employment.
So we have our apprenticeship programs and we partner with the state and others on apprenticeship. We partner to develop with Centralia a curriculum for apprenticeships across the space, including folks who wouldn't end up working for us. So I think that is something that we do uh, when do, we are a union shop. And so when we contract with folks, we do look for that. A lot of our large contracts with the service providers, that's something we look for. That's a key part of that. So I think it's all of the above. So we are looking for all of those things. I think this one about reducing energy burden is a lot of the strategies and tactics that are needed are well within our wheelhouse to have that sort of direct impact. To your point, I believe uh, it's interesting. I use the gas example. There's housing is the largest cost for most people. So I think some of these principles and things would apply beyond our space, but absolutely that's the idea.
As we get into more of these questions, because we've already started taking notes about them in the mural, I want to move us over to that so that we can all see. So, a quick setup to this conversation, we're doing exactly what you're talking about, trying to point out key principles, values, and equity implications that relate to PSE's strategy to eliminate an energy burden. And from the collaboration standpoint, EPSC is partnering with the EAG to in the each aspect of decision making over this process, as Troy talked about. And so something that we're trying to do today is think about those systemic principles, values, and equity implications that are either present in what Troy just explained to us and or what might be good additions or might not be represented right now in that strategy. And so I'm going to go ahead and turn the screen over to our mural. And I wanted to point you towards Nate's comment, Troy, about the apprentices programs and the contractor requirements. Nate, did you want to verbalize your comment as I take us over to the mural?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So there's a couple of things is unlike traditional education, an apprenticeship program requires boots in the field, right? And there are partnerships, like Troy mentioned, that are between organized labor and even a group called CITC. Don't ask me to unpack the acronym, but it's a non-union apprenticeship program. to that have a standardized curriculum, and those partnerships between labor and management run through these programs, and they're not typical. There are some apprenticeship programs that are in-house, but when we look at things like the work that Anthony's local does on line work and transmission work, those are usually partnerships. And so that's with the line piece and the transmission piece. Then when we're building out the infrastructure on some of the products, so the programs that we were talking about during the retreat, like battery storage and things like that, it's possible to have PSE put into the request for proposals in procurement to say, hey, tell us your plan for 15% apprenticeship utilization on these projects, so that when the contractors go to bid that, they know that that's an expectation, and how they build those things. So there's some control there as well that they can do for the capital projects, in addition to what they're already doing with the partnerships with their labor partners.
Yeah, and we do see that in our RFPs, right? We ask for how folks are gonna sort of respond in that space, and we do get the bidders telling us what they plan to do around apprenticeships and the impact they think that will have on the communities that they're building the projects in. I also, to the point about where these are centered, we find that our most impactful and challenging apprenticeships are away from the central or urban areas that we serve. We have infrastructure, we have dams, we have hydro dams that are farther away from the population centers, and we have apprenticeship programs for those for those as well. So absolutely. There was, I think it was Ba that linked that article. Can you
Yeah.
share a little bit about, I'm excited to sort of look at it and see what it says, but can you give us sort of a highlight about what it's pointing to?
Of course, of course. Because like after the retreat, I started like thinking about what you kind of like shared about, how can we structure the rate in a way that we can serve these people, right? Our named communities.
Mhm.
And I was like looking at it and thinking about what are other states doing that we can maybe learn from. And I found that, your example, it's like a first come, first serve here in Washington. But in Ohio, for instance, what they have is a cap. Like they have this thing called PIPP, which stands for Percentage of Income Payment Plan. That caps at certain threshold.
Mhm.
And there's the case study. That's a link. I kind of put it out there. I have free access because I'm a student, so I can use it. But I don't know if you guys gonna have access to the ProQuest link. I think it's very interesting to read how Ohio was able to implement PIPP and helped their named communities.
Okay. Well, I'm sure we can get access. If not, we'll make sure we follow up with you. So, Em will follow up with you and make sure that we have what we need there, because it looks like a pretty interesting work. So thank you.
Yeah, and if I can just chime in, yeah, the PIPP is definitely a model we looked into when we were designing our bill discount rate. And at that time, we came to the EAG as well as to our low income advisory committee with different program designs. And certainly, the complexity of implementing a PIPP program came into play. There is, of course, the IT, the data, right? Because you have to basically calculate the percentage of income for each customer and apply it to your bills. And there is billing data is gigantic, ongoing and complex. But besides that, it's really also comes down to income data, which we do not have. We do not, and do not store it in our systems, even for the customers that energy assistance program customers we have right now, we do not store their income data. It goes through the agencies. I mean, to begin with, like as we said, we actually moved to self-attestation, right? So they only self-attest, but we don't gather income data. And then currently only a percentage of our customers gets through the actual documentation verification process. And the CAP agencies, the community action partnership agencies, do that for us. So they deal with the income documentation. But that said, I think our team would certainly be interested in a working example from Ohio. So that's really, that would be really interesting to look into. Thank you.
Okay, I'll say one. Thank you so much, Klima, for bailing me out there. I'll just say one more thing and then hand it off to Ariam to continue the mural dialogue. Um, so interesting when we found this out when we were investigating along these lines. What we found is that because Washington doesn't have an income tax, it's much harder to get the income data. Whereas states that have an income tax, I know we looked at California for this reason, because they have a similar kind of program. States that have an income tax, there is data available, right, to what people's income is because they have to file that in taxes. We don't have that here, so that's a challenge. Okay, Ariam, I think I've done enough, said enough. Klima, thank you again, and I will let you take over.
Excellent. I did take down from the sharing screen our mural just because y'all are in it and I love to see it. And I'm wondering if before I start kind of summarizing, if anyone who is not able to add their own thoughts on the mural wants to come off mute or add in the chat about from what you've heard, are there key principles, values, equity considerations that are, you know, demonstrably present in this strategy for eliminate energy burden elimination, and also what is potentially missing from this strategy at that systemic level around principles, values, and equity considerations. We talked about the key strategies and the utility mechanisms and have some ideas there, but would love to hear someone if they are unable to be in the mural. And then also if you are in the mural, I can start going through. Oh, yeah, go ahead. Did I see a... Ba, are you trying to come off mute?
Oh, no, I was just gonna say I think I missed that part. So we were supposed to be somewhere and actually write something.
No. And
Okay.
so let me actually go back to this. Let me do it
Okay.
the right way. So this is our mural.
Right.
And so it was just, I don't want to give anyone vertigo. So I'm going to go kind of topic by topic and just kind of see what folks are saying. And then if you add something, we will put it in there. Our team is also taking notes.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you.
And so some of the key strategies that Troy talked about was this technology first to community needs first approach. I think the clean energy transition, you know, we're always thinking about what's the tech that's driving it, but is there a different way to think about that? And does it change how we do investments? Looking at high energy burden as a decision-making lens across PSE operations, looking at high energy burden focus integration into planning, delivery, and resource acquisition. And so those are the key strategies. And then from utility mechanisms, there's how we structure costs or how we build customers, how we direct assistance, how we invest in communities, and how we measure success. And so some highlights from the tech to community need first shift that are values present include the expansion of energy burden access through self-attestation, and some opportunities include community feedback on kind of what upgrades are most realistic for them in their lives, finding ways to lift entire communities out of energy burden at the same time, and then partnering with more organizations to expand information sharing. As well as webinars and in-person events to allow for more communication and access to sign up for programs. And so those are some of the things we're talking about: technology first to community needs first, systemic level thinking. Also, there we go. I'm missing stuff from the chat. Hey, Dorian, would you like to verbalize your comments, or were you just going to put things in the chat?
I can do either. It might be easier for me to verbalize them.
Yes, please go right ahead. We're tracking. Andres, there goes Andres right there, ready to take your notes.
Cool. Yeah, I was just thinking as far as high energy burdens, a lot of these strategies seem to be directed towards homeowners, and how do we help people who are energy burdened but don't own their home?
So non-homeowners, energy burden, and
renters. Yeah,
renters. Excellent. Others that want to verbalize their comments. I would love for this to be a conversation. We want to hear your voices, especially our new members. Oh, there's a question. Does the use of red bills and shut-off notices help expedite payment? Could data about named communities be used to help in communicating these programs available? That's one question from a PSE team.
Rima, you want to take that one?
So the question again is, red bills, is that a disconnection notice? If I'm understanding.
I think so. I think the shut-off notice, yeah. Does it help? Yeah, go ahead.
Expedite the payment. So the first question is, of course, disconnections and is always a last resort for PSE, and throughout the process, I think because the new cohort, most of the cohort of EAG is new, but some of the previous members, you have been here for some of the meetings where our disconnections process managers came and presented. So usually throughout the process, if a customer needs energy assistance, they're put on hold. This process of disconnection is put on hold for them if they take any sort of action. So yes, you would see some data from that process that customers are responding. I'm not sure that it would expedite the payment. Shut off notes help expedite the oh yeah, yep. And then I think the question asks, do you see also the payment of the past due? So there's a disconnect. There's the disconnections is really about your past due bills. So you're right. Once the customer is in that process, they either pay, which would answer your question, expedited payment, or they actually say we need assistance, and then they're taken out of that process as well. And then could data about named communities be used to help in communicating these programs available? Yes, and it is definitely being used actively. As soon as we developed our data sets for named communities, our outreach teams are leveraging that data. They're using clusters of high energy burden customers and named community designations to focus their outreach and improve their outreach.
Thanks, Kalima.
Can I ask who said that bill structure is maybe the biggest lever, and to kind of say more on that? Okay. maybe they're not able to come on. It's okay. I think that's an interesting as far as the group consensus.
That was me.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think I just in terms of being able to have the largest impact across the biggest population, I think the way we structure rates might be the biggest lever we have to like influence that and keep people out of energy burden in the first place. So I just think like in terms of priorities, I don't want to lose that. I think that's like one of our potentially the biggest kind of like change maker in this whole thing. Because I think programs are good, but people have to actively, you know, initiate and participate and apply and whatnot. And if we can structure our rates such that there are not energy burdened folks and we don't have to create programs, it could potentially be lower cost, just overall, and higher impact in terms of number of people reached.
And then I just wanted to point out Dorian's comment about handling shutoffs for people who rely on life-saving equipment and electrified mobility, and how like that is definitely a consideration, an equity consideration when we're talking about that structure of the bill rate and who's it targeted for and how we're working with that. So I'm gonna add that here. Excellent. I want to talk a little bit about what we're seeing over here for some kind of values and key values, principles that are maybe missing. So again, that focus on renters as well, looking at what future energy sources can we invest so that that will reduce high energy burden the most. So looking at the actual acquisition of resources in that through that lens, connecting net metering with community endowments that build more resilience in the events of climate and weather or economic shocks, a concrete framework for what this would actually look like as far as making energy burden a lens for acquisition of energy resources. And then that framework and process should be co-created with community. Oh, I'm missing chats. I'm so sorry. Okay, so yes.
Quick thing, sorry, I just wanted to add that that last sticky note, the third one on here, that was my point. I also I didn't want to overburden the sticky with too much text, but I just wanted to also add, and maybe this is like a half-formed thought, but also accountability for developers in some sense, particularly those that are working on the clean energy, the sort of the build out of renewables, for example, and like in that sense of resource acquisition, just making sure that we have a clear framework for what it means to like, have accountability to equity outcomes and equity goals that are set in the resource acquisition and planning process all the way through that life cycle. So yeah, I'm happy to think about this more, like I guess clarify it a bit further, but just also wanted to add that there. Thanks.
Absolutely. Kalima or Troy, do you have any follow-up questions about that or clarification questions about that?
What Axel just said?
Yes. She's offering to clarify.
No, I understand. I understand where what she's asking and specifically where that's coming. Yeah, no need to clarify.
Members, if there's something that is like you want to make sure you get on the record and verbalize, please raise your hand, speak up, or put it in the chat, and I can make sure to zoom to that comment. Right now, we are on the structure cost structure list, and we're looking at potential things that are missing. So again, the percentage of renters within named communities that might not have influence on systems, perhaps some programs directed towards landlords and affordable housing and how we're engaging with affordable housing providers, burden growth in calculation to cost structure. I don't know who put that one in, but I'd be interested in hearing more about what you mean about burden growth.
That was me.
Yeah.
I talked about it because the percentage of high burden or energy burden customers is continually growing, especially as the rate structure is changing and increasing and set to increase more, and how that is being considered in the calculation for rates going forward.
Excellent. Awesome. I'm going to move on to the next. I just want to do a quick review of our how we direct assistance. Some things that we can maybe consider are moving away from crisis assistance to sustain long-term energy burden alleviation affordability. So again, changing that mindset from emergency management to more of a like systems management. Really interested who put that in, if you want to say a little bit more about that. The 80-20 rule applying to energy burden assistance programs. Initial customers signing up have a lower acquisition cost than the remaining customers not signed up. How do we account for the most difficult to reach customers amongst our named communities / energy burdened? I would like to work with this question for a couple of seconds. So can I ask who put this in the board about the 80-20 rule? Okay, follow up with via email. What about moving away from the first come, first served basis to targeted? That seems like Troy, is that something that PSE has considered in the past? It seems like something that may have been considered potentially.
I mean, the comments, both of the ones you just highlighted, I am excited because the group is doing exactly what we're asking, right? They're pointing out things that we need to consider, and things that will be important for the type of strategies and solutions that we come up with. So no, I think those are perfect, and I hear what they're asking, and I understand how it aligns. So you guys are doing great. Since I'm here, I will say that I think it was Dorian's question about renters. I think that aligns with sort of our understanding that so there are different types of renters. The renters who have responsibility for their bill because they have a meter, those will get captured in this solutioning. I think the renters where um, the building owner sort of pays and then sort of adds that to the rent. That's a little more challenging use case, but we're well aware of that across the industry, and we have things we can do to sort of assist with that, but that will always be a difficult case.
If I may add, there's a little bit of legal and regulatory sort of pieces that we have to work with, right, Troy?
Yeah.
That that set some of the either constraints or just the structures that we work with. For example, one bill, which is not the CETA bill, which is the multi-year rate plan bill, is I think the one that required us to offer a bill discount rate program. That among our energy assistance programs, one has to be a bill discount, and it has to be offered on demand. Basically means if a customer comes, you have to offer it. And then another constraint from another legislature is CETA. I think that Troy was saying it requires us to offer energy assistance to low-income customers, which is another criteria that we have to work against. So offering to low-income customers versus focusing on high energy burden. And there are a lot of kind of pieces we all have to think about how we put them together. Yeah.
Excellent. I would ask for us to continue kind of the conversation as I put back up for our viewers, the call-in information for public comment. In particular, for thinking systemically and we're looking at advising on ways to ease enrollment access, more equitable rate structures, finding hidden customers when it comes to elimination of energy burden, and this long-term strategy that we're collaborating with PSE on. What are the values and the key principles that must be present, and what or that you heard about today and you really are excited about, or that are missing? And if you've got something top of mind, now is the time, and we will continue adding it to our mural. So anyone want to verbalize their thoughts that they, oh, let's see here. Megan asks, the rows are blank. That's a really good point. So some of the rows that are more blank include high energy burden focus integration into planning and delivery, the lens across PSE operations one, and then I think the lens, high energy burden as a decision-making lens across PSE operations, has the fewest comments across the board from EAG members. I don't know if that is purpose or not, but yeah. Thoughts?
Yeah, I think some of those, like the point Oxo was making about RFPs and resource acquisitions, that could go into that box that right now, I'm hearing the feedback and I'm putting it into sort of a mental box, and I think the team's doing great. We would expect that we would have fewer in some of those boxes just because they are further removed from having direct impact on customers. So when you're coming up with a resource plan over 20 years for a generic resource, right? There's less immediacy to that work when it comes to impacting customers and their energy burden.
But can I counter by saying that maybe that 20-year lens is where we can have kind of a long game influence, right? If we kind of build it into the structure, or you guys build it into the structure of that 20-year plan, right? And is that the idea? I would assume that's the idea.
Yes, that's the idea. So absolutely, we're thinking about it there. But in terms of the amount of different things you can do, right? It's not as rich as some of these other customer facing things. So, but absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, but maybe something if there is a plan, that does include I can't talk, high energy burden focus. There we go. It's very late on a Monday. Into it, maybe that's something we could hear about at a future meeting.
And that's on tap, right? We have a
Oh,
lot of
sweet.
conversations on the ISP, which is where that sits.
Okay.
You had some last year, but we're going to have some more this year for the group. So I think the July meeting is probably going to be the first one. So absolutely.
Awesome. Okay,
And those
cool.
ISP folks are those lovely folks we had dinner with a couple of weeks ago. And I know, right? Yeah. And they'll be joining us. And so I think this is what we're here for, to keep bringing those up. And so Megan will remind you to bring it up again when we meet with those folks too. Oh, M says, yes, we'll be meeting with them the rest of the year. Christina noted that we should create infrastructure cooperation that helps communities procure a portion of community solar project to receive bill discounts. Christina, did you want to talk a little bit about that? Or that model? So are you saying that?
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. So what I've heard about so an example would be to create maybe the community to come together and have maybe a community center that would be able to be solarized, or a basketball court. They could put a roof on the basketball court and solarize that. Have the community members come together and create, I don't know, like a co-op where they all provide a portion of the startup costs And then at that point, they can get discounts off their bills. So it's
almost like a tiny cap and trade situation going on.
Yeah, exactly. But I think
Okay.
I think if communities do this, because I know that there is always that pushback that there's not going to be enough electricity for everybody if everybody gets electric cars, and the electricity consumption is definitely going up. But how are we going to generate more energy? So what I see is if we can do small little co-ops throughout our community, we can reduce some of the long-term costs, and then also create additional energy sources.
But Christina, that's interesting because we did an engagement with the Nooksack tribe, and we were looking to put in a community solar installation, and our folks had an idea about where that should go based on sort of the engineering and siting and some of these other things. But when we engaged with the tribe, they actually wanted to put it on a different building. And the reason why they wanted that other building was because it was closer to community members in need, so that it would then be easier to provide some of the on-bill benefits to those members who were vulnerable. And so it required different engineering and other things in order to make that work. But it was such a priority for them based on their own sort of community benefit idea that we ended up going with their solution. So that's a good point. Yeah.
Well, you all, I think you achieved our meeting objectives, which were to learn about the Green Power Solar Grant. We've recruited members, and we've maybe recruited too many members. Em's going to be working through that. But then really kicking off this procedural justice conversation around the long-term energy burden elimination strategy, which is something that PSE will be collaborating with the EAG on over time. And so again, like Em said, the notes, the summary report I think the slides were sent out ahead of time with the agenda, but I think we can resend them out with the summary. I don't think that's an issue. And I think they also live in the SharePoint file as well. In the meeting summary, we will incorporate the mural that we have, but that is our mural. It will be on file. We'll put it in your folder. Please feel free to continue adding notes to it over the next couple of days if you have an aha moment, or like Em said, to email us and we will make sure it gets there. But with that, it is 7 o'clock. We thank you so much for joining us this evening, and I hope everyone has a great night. Bye, all.
Thanks all.